of Hive Talks on Tap. The theme today that we are going to discuss is Women, Finance and Tech. What will the new normal look like? So first of all, for those of you who do not know Hive, we are a global network of female founders. Our founders range from project idea to Series A or B, all the way to exit. And our purpose is to support women entrepreneurs and to contribute to increasing the volume of investment that goes towards female-funded or co-funded enterprises everywhere in the world. This week, we are extremely thrilled to welcome Sam Seaton, who is the CEO of Moneyhub Enterprise and who has been identified as one of the future dominant CEO. I removed the female here because I think she's just a brilliant CEO altogether, male or female. Across the table from Samantha, we have our very own founder here at Hive, Felicia Meyerovitz-Singh, who is the founder and CEO of the award-winning fintech Moneyhub. So first of all, Samantha, Felicia, welcome. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. Welcome to both of you as well. Lovely to meet you both today.
So Samantha, do you want to maybe start by introducing yourself, introducing Moneyhub Enterprises, the mission of this fantastic company that you've been building to our audience?
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. So I grew up in Towers Perrin, which is with financial services, institutional financial services. So worked closely with many of the brilliant actuaries there, where a lot of financial services products are designed and taken to market through the retail market. And what I learned is that the consumer hasn't got a hope of knowing anything about financial services or their money. And it's not because the consumer doesn't care or isn't bright enough or anything like that. It's just I learned about how complicated we make products and services in the financial world. So really what's happened is I've ended up in a position where I've been able to make an impact, I think, to the ultimate end consumer in terms of their money. So our mission in life is all about making it easier to understand your finances and give you greater control. Because I think with greater control over your money, you have better clarity and you can make more informed decisions. And the right ones for you, which is always unique. When it's something to do with your money, I think it's very personal. So there is no real right answer or right way for everyone. It's very different, but so therefore you need to be enabled to make an informed decision. And that really sits at the very heart of what we do at Moneyhub.
Well, I think it makes even more sense in the global context that is ours right now, where definitely the more fragile in our societies are already the ones that are the most impacted by the crisis, and it's going to continue to be so in the coming months. Maybe let's start with a very large question. What is your vision of the future right now when it comes to financial wellness?
So when it comes to financial wellness right now, I think it's going to go backwards before it goes forwards, I'm afraid. But I sometimes think if you take a step backwards, you can actually make a better path forward. And so I hope, because I'm such an optimist, that with COVID, what we've learned is that actually it's not all about money. It is about the value of our life, our time with family, friends, because I think that's really been brought to the forefront to everyone's attention. And I think it was there before COVID, this feeling that people wanted a little bit more time back, a bit more quality about their life, and made people question really whether it's all about, earning the highest bonus possible in terms of what they could do with their work. And I think there was a lot of shifting in the thinking of that. So what do I think is going to happen? I think in terms of financial wellness, we're going to see an acceleration of priorities in terms of quality of life. And it's not going to be necessarily about how much money I can pile up or sit on. I think it's going to be about that balance, which is actually really what wellness is all about, is finding the right balance. And so I would like to think that COVID has helped accelerate a balance in our life in terms of money and what we're trying to achieve.
And for you personally as a CEO, are there changes that you are considering right now because of a different perception that you might have in terms of balance of your company, balance for yourself as the leader of this company?
So I think it always does challenge your thinking. I think being a fintech business, you're always a little bit at the forefront of some of what's going on in terms of the way you work, because the company obviously that I run, a lot of technology people, they're quite comfortable working from home. So to be honest, when we had to work from home, it wasn't really a big deal because we probably all have worked from home, are set up to be able to work from home. So I think that wasn't such a big shock for us. But I think some of the thinking or challenges that we've got at the moment is genuinely, do we need an office, in the future? I mean, it's different to be able to find places to congregate, to be able to get together, but do we actually need the concept anymore of an office? So that's a challenge that is going through the thinking of our entire workforce, at Moneyhub at the moment, just because I think it's an opportunity to maybe make some changes in the way you do things. Whereas, if you get back into the normal mode of an office and you keep growing that office, you almost get a bit stuck in that cycle. So I think these are opportunities to take a step back and think, well, do we actually need an office? So yeah, so we're definitely thinking about even probably going a step further than what we had done previously.
Are there the same, Felicia, when it comes to you? Are there the same things that you are facing at the moment? Are you facing the same challenges with Akoni?
Yeah, well, obviously we're much smaller than Moneyhub, so let's start there. So even easier for us to be remote. And it's a question we're asking ourselves as well. Like right now, we don't have an office because our Regis lease was up, and we were like, well, we're getting new investment, which is going to mean we actually have to move. So we just said, let's let the lease lapse and then make a decision, because we are going to have to be in our new investors' offices anyway, and then decide from there. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Sam, is aside from the offices, like, what's your view on how people want to balance their work life, if you know what I mean, in this environment or post this environment?
So I think post this environment, the thing that stood out to me that when I've been chatting to everyone at in Moneyhub, and also in other companies, actually, it's not just Moneyhub, is things like being at home, to have dinner with everyone. So being able to sit around a table and actually share an evening meal. People haven't. I think what's shocking is how much everyone's realised how much they don't do things like that. So I think some of the really simple things that probably 20 or 30 years ago was absolutely the norm, which somehow has disappeared off the planet. But actually people are thinking, it would be great just to be able to have dinner as a family again 4 or 5 nights a week rather than never. And then I think also perhaps realizing that we've all got a bit too busy. So I think with the sport, so some of the people have said, actually, although they like doing a lot of sport and they obviously want to get back to doing a bit of sport, I don't think they're going to go back to doing quite as much as what they were doing. So, children left, right and centre every night being pulled in all different directions. I think actually everyone's a bit more like, we don't need to do quite as much. So I think that is definitely what I'm hearing. So the only thing I question though is, knowing human beings like I do, we are tenacious in our nature, and we have the best intentions, but we're not very good at following through. So if you want my honest opinion, I'm a little bit suspicious about how many of us that have decided that having dinner at 6 o'clock with everyone is a good idea. I don't know that we're going to be as good at sticking to that once we unfold. I think we fall in love with the idea, and it's great that we can do that at the moment because it's kind of almost self-imposed. You have no choice. I'm not 100% sure we're going to stick to our guns on some of this stuff.
I also, originally I used to work in the insurance market, so with long liabilities. And someone said to me once when I first joined the market, they said, just remember that human beings have short memories. So what's going to happen is whatever you think this terrible, awful disaster has happened and it's going to change the world. And then 6 months later, everything is almost back to where it was, just because we've got somehow short memories. So I'm also a bit skeptical about how much permanent lifestyle changes we'll see out of this.
I mean, the one that I really hope we hang on to genuinely, and the reason I think it would be good to be able to hang on to something from this, is because of the impact on financial wellness in terms of women, which, you know, you raised at the beginning, Magda. And I just think that we should try and hang on to that. So the flexible working part, I really hope what we have done with this is broken the back of flexible working across all companies. So before, there was a lot of companies that would embrace it, part-time work, shared jobs, you know, there was a lot going on. But when I say a lot, still very much fringe activity. The core of what was running through a lot of very big companies was still not embracing that working from home. And just speaking to a fellow CEO the other day, saying when they go back to normal, they're definitely going to let more people work from home more flexibly, because they realize they can still get things done. People don't disappear to the golf course. People don't, you know, not work. People are wired to work, and I think you've got to rely on that a bit more and a bit more trust. And that's the one thing I really would despair if we don't make a change on, because from my perspective, one of the biggest changes that we can help women with is just allowing a bit more flexibility in the way we do our work. And I think if we could do that, we would be a lot better off.
I totally agree with you. That's something we've been advocating a lot to our clients, to our company, is to make remote and role share part of the HR strategy, part of the HR policies, so that all the benefits, if I can say so, that we had from the crisis, we can actually leverage on rather than just making it a sort of parenthesis. You mentioned sports. That's actually interesting, because I read the other day that over 90% of the world's female CEOs are actually athletes or former athletes, or have some kind of competition background. And I think it's also your case, Sam, right?
Yes. I ended up in the UK because I was shortlisted for the Sydney 2000 Olympics in 3-day eventing, so in equestrian. So but to get shortlisted, so I got longlisted obviously in Australia with my horse, but to get shortlisted, you had to compete internationally. And I had never competed outside of Australia, apart from in the New Zealand Australian team called the Trans-Tasman event. So that's the only thing I had done on a kind of an international scale. And actually it was my husband, actually, because I decided that was ridiculous. I mean, taking a horse to either the US or the UK, pretty much. They're the two countries you go to get international experience eventing, because that's the international stage. So I thought, that's ridiculous, right? You know, that's not happening. And he said to me, when you're old, you know, in your 80s, he said, do you want to think in your rocking chair? Do you want to think about what you have done or what you could have done? And that was it. I thought, he's absolutely right. So I then, you know, spent a fortune flying a horse around the world and doing all those ridiculous things in my 20s with no money, by the way. You know, I mean, as in, you know, it's not like I had a load of money, but just off the back of that. And he obviously wanted to work over in the UK as well. So he's IT geek, so he thought it'd be brilliant to work over here. So he's really supportive. And I rode internationally for 2 years, Badminton Burley. I rode at the Lyon and in your country, Magda, wow. And all around Europe, actually, Ireland, Punchestown. I mean, Bokkelo in Holland. I had a ball. I mean, I had an absolute ball. And I made it to about 8th. There was 12 of us in the squad, and I got to about 8th on the list, and 5 went. So, and obviously 4 compete and 1's reserve. So I think I was actually pleased I wasn't like 5th and had to fly all the way back to Australia not to compete. That would have just about killed me. So I don't swap it for the world, but I realized that I didn't also want to live my life every 4 years kind of almost solely focused on getting into this team. And I thought, I love my horses, always love my horse, still love my horses, but realized I didn't think I could live my life every 4 years because of this one sport, especially when you're so reliant on that horse to stay sound and fit and well as yourself. It's quite a fractious environment. So that is what brought me to the UK, and I've never returned, actually. I love it here. I love it in the UK. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, me too.
That's a great story. I love that story, and I love the passion that you have about that story. Actually, I think something special happened also today, because if I'm correct, you've been shortlisted for the 2020 Women in Financial Advice Awards.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Congratulations.
I was wondering, like, for our founders who are listening and who are fundraising at the moment, who are in the process of fundraising for their company, be it in fintech or other industries, what would be the advice that you would give them right now based on your experience at the time where you were funding for Moneyhub Enterprises and based on your vision and the understanding of everything that is going on at the moment in the investment world?
So, I don't think it's changed, because of COVID. I think the advice I would give is the more naive you are sometimes, I think the better. So I don't think you can be prepared for what's coming, and I don't think you should let that worry you. I think almost sometimes not knowing what's coming is actually better, because it won't get in the way. You will get on, you will strive to do what you're wanting to do, and sometimes not knowing perhaps how hard that's going to be is a good thing. So I think having that energy and enthusiasm and that single-mindedness about what really drives you and what you want, I would like to say that is all you need, right? So at one level, that is all you need. Obviously, to make a successful business, the market has to be, you have to have the market, right at the time that you take whatever you're doing to market. And I think you have to have, a product that, can be sold, to commercialize a business. But don't get me wrong, I don't think anything beats tenacity. And so I just think it's, how do I put it? You could research everything beautifully and get it all right. But actually someone who honestly hasn't got a clue about anything to do with investment or founding, but because they're so wedded to what they want to do, will have equally as, a successful run at it. So I'd like to say, don't let a lack of knowledge about investment and that world put you off ever. Because there's so many people that are inspirational, that I've read up on, that's made me, almost get more confidence, so, you kind of think, oh my God, there's all these brilliant people and they've done this and they've done this 3 times. And you think to yourself, but there's always got to be a first time for everyone. And so never let that put you off. And the other thing I would say is that you've really got to use your network, your friends, and you've got to be willing to go well outside your comfort zone in terms of your network and the ask that you have of people. And I don't really mean just people, I just mean genuinely, if you want some advice because you're struggling, think to yourself, who do I know that might be able to answer that question? And if you have to ask 3 people, just keep going until you've got the answer that helps you to get to the next stage. So, and that does require you to step outside your comfort zone and just accept that once you've done that, it won't feel as bad as what it did when you started. So I'm someone who, if you look back at when I started my career, you would not have got me speaking at ever. I mean, literally not in front of anyone. You wouldn't have got me on something like this. You wouldn't have got me on a stage. None of that. In fact, the whole thought would be enough to send me running for the hills. So I think you've got to just appreciate that once you're driven about something, you will be amazed at what you'll do that you won't do unless you're put in that position. So you won't do it by choice. You won't do it because you want to. And it doesn't mean that you won't be good at it. That's the other thing that's really weird. Everyone says to you, oh, you can only be good at stuff that you really, what is it like? Crazy. I don't like public speaking, but apparently I'm quite good at it. So it's like, well, there you go. So that just proves, right? Just proves you can do stuff and be good at it and you don't even like it. So I think really you don't let any of that put you off.
I love the idea of support and yeah, just go ahead, Fee, because I know how you feel about women supporting women. So just go ahead.
Yeah. Well, generally supporting anyone, but I just feel that women have the least amount of support, partly because we don't have role models and our networks are different. Not every woman, obviously, but on the whole. So my view is, first of all, is exactly what you're saying, Sam, is leverage as many networks as possible and try and establish, in like deep relationships, because that's really what's going to serve you well. But also the never give up. I'm very kind of, if you have a product, an idea, and obviously listen to feedback from your clients and you need to change it if the market changes, but you can't listen to negativity. You just got to focus on whatever your targets are and keep going. Yeah, I always use that Afrikaans expression, which is called vastbyt, which literally means fast bite. And it really is like, hold on tight, like never let go, because you're going to go through rough times, turbulent times. You can ask Rael, Sam, say, what does vastbyt mean? And no matter what, and if you hold on, you'll get through to the other side. So it's something I reflect on with founders. And I think especially for early stage founders, if you can find a mentor, someone who you can talk to sometimes, laugh with sometimes, probably occasionally have to cry with.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, the other thing I would say, just actually, ironically, I mean, some of the reason that I think sometimes people with a background in sports, especially at maybe a high level of competition, is that sometimes without realizing it, I probably draw on some of the techniques that I have learned from that top level competition, because it's a lot of pressure. So, you will go into an event and you know that if you don't finish in the top 10, you're not going any further. And so much can go wrong, I mean, literally go wrong. And you've got to learn to compartmentalize, you've got to learn to focus on and get rid of all the distractions. There's so much that you learn probably through competitive sport that it doesn't completely surprise me that, that somehow sets you up in a way for your future in a world of business and entrepreneurialism. So the one thing I would say is, if you haven't got that background, I mean, it obviously doesn't matter, I mean, but the one thing that I think I have drawn on a lot is a technique that we learnt in terms of being able to do something you don't think you can do. So the sports psychologists that we had, you'll always get to a point when you're about to compete, and something about the competition, it gets in your brain and it niggles, and it's something that's like blocking, like you'll get a thing about, I don't think I'm going to be able to do X. And apparently it gets bigger and bigger in your mind. And you've got to be able to take it back down again, so that it's literally nothing, because it probably is nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's just that your brain is very good at fixating on things, to make difficult. So anyway, one of the techniques, and there's a lot of books about it, and it's, for example, you've got to visualize it being no issue, and it's really bizarre when you do it. And we used to have to like visualize 100 times in a row, being able to do whatever it is, whatever fence or whatever thing we decided we kind of was going to be difficult or wasn't going to go well, and you have to picture yourself doing it amazing. And in the minute you get to like, this is going to sound really weird, but you get to like 48 and your brain goes, that didn't work that time, and you have to go and start again then, and go back to 1 and go to 100, and you've got to get from 1 to 100 and do it beautifully. And I think some of that training that you have, ironically, gets you ready to like literally cut through some of the toughness. So I would say there are definitely books around, and really what it's all about is getting rid of the demons, isn't it? So get rid of the demons and keep going on that positive and the things that you want to do. So I guess the only other advice I would say is, if you haven't had some of that, don't be scared to go and do a bit of reading about how to bin your demons and put them in a box and wrap them up and chuck them away and then go, because I think you do need a bit of that along the way.
But actually that's very true, because we often get this comment from female founders about imposter syndrome, which is exactly, to me, what you are referring to. Like I always say, I don't feel the imposter syndrome, so I have less empathy around it, but I hear it so often that I'm like, well, there must be ways to overcome this. And I'd never even thought of just using a established technique. We should actually put something out on our group, Magna, don't you think? It's interesting.
I just love the link that you're making between the two of you, because I've seen you, Fee, managing your team. I've seen you talking to your staff when we were in Paris last time for the Paris FinTech Forum and so on. So
yes.
I can feel this energy that you can bring as a leader to your team to motivate them and to help them, as you were saying, Sam, just block from your mind everything that's blocking you from moving forward. I think it's crucial at this time, because I can just imagine how hard it is to motivate your teams right now and to keep them resilient, to keep them healthy, to keep them serene as much as possible. Have you been like Brie,
Sorry.
managing that along the last 2 months, and how are you envisioning the weeks ahead?
Well, I think for what I've always learned, and it was brought home to me again recently, is sometimes it's the little things that really count a lot. So there's one of the guys in our team decided to do a plug-in like Donut to our thing, and then actually had to upgrade it because Donut doesn't do enough pairing, but it pairs random people for a coffee and chat for half an hour in your calendar. It's lovely, and it runs on every second Monday, and it does this random pairing of 2 people. And I thought that was such a lovely idea, you know, that he did that. I then organise it's a Welsh company that makes brownies. So every fortnight you get brownies at the moment from this Welsh company to have with your coffee and chat. So you have your virtual coffee and chat with your real brownies.
Oh, nice.
And the thing is, honestly, everyone is like sending pictures of their brownies and how many they've got left and how many they didn't get because their kids ate them all. And you know, it's just it's little things, but I think we can't forget in times like this, sometimes it is just the little things. So a call to someone that you wouldn't normally call in your team, just asking how they're getting on. I really think you can never underestimate those tiny little things that you can do. And obviously, you know, brownies have got full of sugar, so a good sugar kick occasionally helps everyone. But it is
I might adopt that.
It is the little things. So and I think that's something in Moneyhub will be post-COVID, will be our coffee and chat with brownies. I can see that living on, and there'll be years to come, and people will think, where did that start in Moneyhub? And it's like, you know, and it started back in COVID when Ian decided we all should talk to each other randomly every 2 weeks. And it's lovely, right? So I think sometimes it is the little things, and they don't take an awful lot. So, you know, you could send everyone, you know, you could send a random person each week a postcard, you know, do you know what I mean? It's, you know, that you get through the mail, couldn't you? Just some weird things like that, which are just a bit more real, a bit more tangible at this time, I think, rather than so much of the virtual stuff.
I love that. And
yeah, you're so right.
It's totally right. It actually brings me to the question of data, because we have a very data-driven industry, and I like the fact that I'm seeing so many fintech at the moment that are extremely human focused, that are extremely inclusion and diversity focused, and I just love that as an industry, we are also making that our responsibility to think in a very human and caring perspective. But actually, when it comes to data, I'm curious about one thing, because we are such a data-driven industry. How do you think, and we've seen during COVID that data has had so many very positive and also not so positive implications. How do you think, from a customer perspective, that our customers, the fintech customers, are going to benefit from the use of data that we're going to be able to embed in our products?
So, well, Fee may have a better answer to this than me, but my view is the really big shift that fintechs are going to benefit from is the broader take-up of the digital economy. So the broader data set that we're going to get in terms of some of our elderly community that have embraced technology in a way that they probably never would have done so. People that are seeing their grandchildren on Zoom, for example, more often than they've seen them in real before COVID, because actually they're getting a couple of times a week with them, you know, on Zoom. And it made me think that actually probably we've enabled more inclusivity in terms of technology and given some of the kind of outliers a bit more confidence about the technology. And so I think, to me, that's the biggest shift we're going to see, is that we will get a wider reach. So you know, we talk about early adopters and things like that, but actually I think we're going to find we're not relying so much on the early adopters. We're going to have a much broader reach of people, which is fantastic, right? I mean, it's brilliant for the people and for the fintechs.
Yeah, I think, yeah, not COVID specific. Anyway, there was a trend towards more open data. not only in open banking and open finance and open pensions, but across everything, like land registry data, those APIs are available and so on. But more than that, also, I think because one of the COVID implications for me is because more employers, especially large scale financial services institutions with massive distribution, millions and millions of customers, they have had to either shut their call centers or their customer services lines because they were unable to distribute the calls, and quite rapidly working in the background to find ways to engage customers. So if they hadn't adopted digital prior to this, I think it's going to ramp up their agenda. And even us, you know, we're a cash marketplace solution, and you can literally do everything, you know, on board, do your anti-money laundering with a selfie from your sofa. So we fit the whole work remote, live your life from your home environment. And we've seen this massive increase in interest in our kind of products and platforms and the way we work. So I think the push is going to come from consumers, but even more than that, I think the big players who spend the money on investing in solutions for those consumers are going to prioritize this more, right? Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so we've even had a couple of clients, which is so lovely for them, where they've been trying to get some of their digital transformation projects, you know, up and running, and they've put in great business cases, and for one reason or another, it's not been a priority. You know, last year I had one client, you know, who tried twice to get their business case through and got told that the business case was amazing, but no cigar. You know? And then he rang me literally a few weeks ago, so excited. He said, Sam, he said, guess what? I'm like, what? He said, I've had my business case approved. Like I've got, because suddenly the priority of digital transformation and making inroads to that world suddenly has gone up the list for them. So he was very excited, actually. So I agree with Fee that, and you won't see it with all companies, but the ones I think that are going to come out and survive and thrive are the ones that definitely are thinking, do you know what, we need to get on the front foot in terms of some of the, and they're not big projects with massive, you know, multi-million-dollar spends. They're, you know, that's the beauty of fintech. You know, they can experiment a little bit. And anyway, it's nice to see some of the companies that obviously, you know, I will be keeping an eye on, because for me, those ones that are willing to invest a little bit of money in exploring some of their digital work that their teams are, you know, champing at the bit to do. I personally think they're going to be the ones that will really rise and shine in terms of the corporates of the future.
Yeah,
I love it. We have about 5 minutes left on our conversation. There was a question that I wanted to have the opportunity to ask you, Sam. It's about investment. You just say that we're lucky to see some people taking a chance on investing in businesses that they wouldn't have invested prior to the crisis. Do you think that women and men invest differently? I'm asking you this question because neuroscientists say that men and women brains are exactly the same. There are like no neurological differences. So just out of curiosity, do you think that we invest differently than men do?
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. I have no idea. I mean, maybe it's true that we are identical, but something changes at some point, because and I mean, you'll never ever be able to explain it away so easily, right? But you know, and obviously this is a generalization, so because obviously there's exceptions to every rule. But what I would say in general, men are way more willing to take risk, just as a general rule. And they're not as precious about, you know, like if they lose money, they're like, oh, well, you know, whatever, you know, they gamble, you know, men are more likely to gamble, bet on horses, bet on races, bet with each other. So if you just think about it, you know, how many girls do you know that, you know, enjoy a good bet? You know, it's just not in our kind of DNA, is it? But if you just
I like a good bet.
I know, but if you go to the boys, you know, that I know, they'll bet on anything. I mean, literally. I mean, I'm not saying they've got gambling habits, but you know, it's just, I guess what I'm trying to describe here is the propensity to take risk is feels or seems much higher with most men, and obviously there's always outliers. But having said that, what it means more generally is that I think whether it's because it starts young and it builds, and so there's this diversity issue that is what creates it. What it means is that, you know, women are definitely not feeling either confident about their finances or the ability to make decisions. And I definitely still think that's to do with the roles we play, where, you know, we are encouraged to nurture and to, you know, to care, whereas you know, there is still very much a lot of pressure on men to be, you know, genuinely to be the breadwinner. I still think that is an undercurrent, and I think it's changing. And I think a lot of men, you know, I don't think necessarily do want all the pressure of being the breadwinner. So I think it is definitely changing, but not overnight. But sadly, I mean, I can say to you, we did a survey of all our Moneyhub customers recently, and it's not the split that we see in the actual usage of the technology, but the ones that were willing to talk about money and give us feedback were 80% men, because they love money. Men love money. I mean, you know, it's really important to them, and I don't quite know how we literally turn that on its head. So it's as important for women. I think if it was as important for us, perhaps we would be of the same mindset. But I don't know. It's a tricky one, because it's not easily cracked.
No, not easy, but we've got to crack it. Like, that's my view. Is the fact is
I won't be leaving it without cracking it, you know, as in a big way. But I'm just saying it's not easy to do, you know, it's not easy to crack.
Yeah. But I think women buy things from Amazon. We take out mortgages. So there's lots of aspects of our consumer decisions that happen due to the way they are offered to us. So it might mean in a lot of ways that maybe the investment industry was first designed with one gender in mind, or one type of persona in mind. And now there has to be another type of persona, and maybe others as time goes. I don't know. All I'm saying is women are more than capable of making decisions. So what is it? And whether it's something that starts in childhood and the whole socialized aspect of things, you know, I'm really convinced that I do not want my daughter to grow up in the same world, like with the sort of socialized, rigid thought processes that we seem to have. Anyway, it's my soapbox.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much, Fee. It was really, really great to talk to you today. And we will continue to talk about money and to talk about cash and investment and being funded. To all our audience, thank you very much for listening. I would like to ask you to visit our website, hivefunders.net, register, follow our news, become a member. It's free, as long as we are talking about money. And we have a lot of resources to offer. Check out our upcoming events, and we'll be just very happy to continue discussing all these matters with the broader community.
Thanks, Magda. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ladies. Goodbye then.